Hello and welcome to another version of the Fourmation Podcast. It's episode number 37 and it's another Euro 2020 episode, of course. We're now so far into the tournament. It started with 24 teams and we've had 48 games that have been played now and only 4 teams remain. And believe it or not, England are one of them. So it's going to be a big week ahead, probably a nerve-wracking week as well. Obviously, England were in this position 3 years ago in the World Cup, and now we're in this position again. We certainly can't complain about the last few years. We'll get onto the finer details of the games that we've seen itself in a short while. But Harry, before we do that, we've got to just touch on our immediate thoughts. Well, not immediate thoughts because we're recording this a little while after the Ukraine game, but just briefly about that. It was pretty nice to be able to relax a little bit for that quarterfinal after what had been a pretty nerve-wracking last 16 tie, wasn't it? It was a really relaxing Saturday evening.
Oh, yeah, most certainly. I thought coming into the game, Ukraine were really going to hold their ship steady. And I think probably Shevchenko had that idea when you score 3 minutes into the game, the entire game plan goes out the window because you not immediately have to open up, but then I think the game became more free just immediately, just because we scored so early, and then it was still tight at half time, and then we scored another early goal. And if anything, I said, I want Ukraine to score because this is just too easy. This is a bit dull. I'm happy we scored 4 goals, but it was just simple. Yes, Pickford had to make a couple of good saves, but yeah, it was a nice, comfortable viewing, which we're not used to as quarter-finalists.
Sam, I know you had your doubts about this England team at the start of the tournament, but you must surely now be believing that this dream is alive and that this could be our year.
Yeah, I have my doubts, but I didn't say round of 16 would go out, Harry and Devon. So there you go. Yeah, like you say, it was very comfortable against Ukraine. There's never really a point in the game where I thought we would lose this game, and that's very rare watching England in the tournament. Like you say, it's usually very nerve-wracking, like the Germany game was. But I think that game against Sweden for Ukraine really took it out of them. It was a really battled and bruised performance from them, having to play that 120 minutes and all the injuries and suspensions they had coming into the game. So it all worked out for us in the end.
Absolutely, it did. Devon, I have to ask you, if we go all the way and win it, will you be following Phil Foden and the entire England squad in getting your hair bleached? I think it's a question everyone wants to know the answer to.
Well, no.
What do you mean, no? What if...
This is bad enough. This is
George,
bad enough.
if you
Never
do it,
mind
then.
putting some blonde. George, you have to go. I want full blonde Mohican now. This time we're changing it up.
I think I am going to do it. I think I am getting it bleached. I think most certainly.
Would you go for the style as well? The short back and sides?
I don't know about the style. I really don't know how that would look. Although it'd probably be an improvement on the current style. Who knows?
I mean, currently you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, haven't you?
Well, what about you, Harry, Sam? Are you going to go for it?
I stupidly, whilst I was at the gym, agreed to the hair colour. People say that I said the trim. I did not say the trim. I said the hair colour because it won't look that different. So I get the hair colour, nothing else. That's where it stops. Let's not get silly here. So yeah, I just said the hair colour.
I probably wouldn't look as psychotic as I did with the buzz cut that I had during the first lockdown. So why not?
I think if Phil Foden had inspired this tournament, I'd be thinking about it. But I'm probably end up going for a Raheem Sterling, just shorter buzz cut, really.
No, I think we've waited years for what could be a winning tournament. I'm not going to, we're not there yet because we're not even in the final yet. But I just think it's such an exciting thought. So let's see. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time.
George, it's fine to have the exciting thought of that, but then don't pin us with some haircut.
I just thought he said he's looking forward to the exciting thought of Phil Foden's haircut. Then he went off tangent to winning the tournament.
Yeah, no contracts have been signed, so you're not bound to doing it. But I just think it's an interesting thought for sure. We're going to touch over all of the quarterfinal games then, starting with Switzerland against Spain, and this one went all the way to penalties. It was the first of the 4 quarterfinals. It was 1-1 at full time, and Switzerland held through extra time to take it to penalties. Despite having 10 men for the whole of that period after Remo Freuler's sending off. They stuck it out, but it got to the shootout, and only 4 of the 9 penalties taken in that shootout were scored. Harry, can you remember seeing many worse shootouts in recent times? I know last week you were praising the standard of the penalties that have been taken, but there wasn't much praise to be given out from this one.
No, so I saw the first Switzerland penalty and I was like, here we go. They're going to smash it all 5. Just do what you did last week. And there we go. I just think the pressure just massively got to them. It wasn't a fantastic goalkeeper saves the penalties. It was just, like you say, they were just awful penalties. I think the thought of getting to that semi-final and then you face Italy in a 50, it's obviously not a 50-50 because Italy are obviously favourites, but going into that game, you think, yes, there's a good chance we're only 2 games away from what is an absolutely momentous underdog story. But yeah, they just completely lost it. I think when Fabian Schär missed the penalty, I think that's when the nerves really, really got to them. And maybe the excitement when they saw Busquets hit the post, they thought, hang on a minute, it's on once again. But yeah, they just completely lost all levels of composure, and their penalties just weren't good at all. They really, really weren't.
Yeah, and Spain, of course, the 3-time champions, have won it 3 times before. They're into the semis. I think at the start of the tournament, not many were seeing them as real contenders to win it. Sam, are you surprised to see them get this far?
I am surprised because they're a young team, very inexperienced, and their recent tournaments, they have struggled a lot. But Luis Enrique has got this side playing very attractive football. Unfortunately for them, their old problems that they had in those first 2 group games seem to rear their head in this game. Obviously, with Switzerland going down to 10 men for that red card, I think for pretty much the whole of the second half, and Spain dominated possession again, but again, they struggled to convert the chances. Morata and Moreno, the 2 forward men, struggled again, which would be an issue for them, considering how many chances they create as well. They should be scoring more goals. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised that they've made it this far, but the way they play, they just dominate the possession, and they, don't give the team a chance of coming back into the game as they did with Switzerland.
Devon, would you agree with Sam? Do you think the fact they've got to this stage is a real achievement for them, given, the age of their squad and, the relative inexperience of it?
Yeah, but I think they have kind of been lucky at times, though. But, I mean, they deserve to get to this stage anyway, because that Croatia versus Spain game was absolutely phenomenal, and whichever team were going to come out of that would kind of be catapulted into a line of, these could win it. I just don't, as I've said numerous times, I'm still, even though, yes, they play attractive football, I'm just still not convinced by their conviction, their will to win. I think they're very poor in them. Like I said, they get into them areas and they sort of panic, and when they pass it around the areas that is least damn it, where there's less penetration, just to get them sort of passing stats up. But on the flip side, we saw the frailties as well, where the defensive side, obviously Azpilicueta dragging up the other 2 centre halves at times. I think Laporte playing on the right of if it depends how they set up with the back 3 or the 4, but I think whoever's played next to Laporte has just not looked convincing at all. Pau Torres is weak. I don't think Eric Garcia's also got that sort of ruthless side to him. I think it's just more they're in there to be them progressive passers from the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't seem that we're entirely convinced by what Spain have offered, and we'll talk about who they're going to face in the semis in a moment. Quickly, though, on Switzerland, Harry, I seem to remember you saying earlier on in the tournament about how they always seem to get to the knockouts of tournaments and then struggle to get through that last 16 match. So do you think they'll go home from this with a bit of pride that, they had that result against France, that which will go down as a pretty famous night in their history?
I think that is quite literally their most famous night. And why not? They beat the World Cup winners on a penalty shootout and they scored 3 goals. It's not like they scraped a 0-0. They played defensive the entire game and then just battered them on penalties. They scored 3 goals and they got, very far against Spain. Once again, very unlucky. They should be really, really proud of their tournament and look at it as a positive, because they can play a bit more. I know they're not massively expansive, but look at the way they played against France and they were successful. So why not head into the World Cup, which I imagine they'll qualify for, with hope of getting better? Because why not? There's no reason they can't.
I think they were a little hard done by the red card in the end. I think it was a little bit of a reckless challenge, but I wouldn't say it was dangerous enough to warrant a red card. But that's a whole nother discussion, isn't it, on what challenges a red card these days?
I think it was just forceful, and it's the classic trampoline foot touch, chase it down, and just throw yourself into a challenge. And I think pretty much most of them you get red cards for, don't you? I mean, both feet were off the ground, but studs were facing away from. Was it Morata that went down? I think it was Morata. There's argues for both. I'd have given a yellow. And as Peter Walton, every time they bring him in, agrees with the referee. So whatever the referee decision, that's Peter Walton's.
You have to praise Simon, the Spanish goalkeeper as well, to bounce back the way he has after that mistake early in the Croatia game. I think he was brilliant in extra time in that game and also in the penalty shootout here as well. So congrats to him. It's not easy for goalkeepers when they make those sort of mistakes to get out of your mind and to continue to play well. So credit to him as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think both keepers from this game came out of it with a lot of praise, didn't they? I think a lot of people felt sympathy for Jan Sommer, and I think probably rightly so. And as for Peter Walton, I think maybe only his own family members think that he adds some value to the ITV coverage. I'd be interested to meet anyone who disagrees with that. But moving on to the second game on that Friday of quarterfinal games. It was teed up as probably the most appetizing game of the tournament so far, and I think it's fair to say that it didn't disappoint. Italy beating Belgium by 2-1. That was in Munich, of course. It was Barella and Insigne who put Italy 2 in front in the first half. Lukaku did pull one back just before half-time. How impressed were you, Devon, with the quality on show throughout this game?
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on it last week that this would be an interesting tie, just to see how how Italy would be with a creative force coming at them, and how Belgium would be able to, if they'd be able to deal with Italy's attack with the high line and the aging defence. And I think overall, Italy were probably the better side. It were a fun first half, don't get me wrong, but in the second they just defended well, and they really just kept pushing Belgium further and further back. And with the shots that Belgium troubled Italy with, they were all from rather the edge of the area or further back, just because the ruthlessness and how tight they were to just push them back were really well managed.
Mm-hmm. And as you say there, Belgium maybe struggled to create too many opportunities, but there were a couple in that second half which fell to Romelu Lukaku, and we've praised him in previous episodes for how clinical he's been in front of goal. But I think it's fair to say he missed a couple of sitters. How surprised were you, Harry, to see those chances go amiss?
I think it's just law of averages at the end of the day. I know it sounds strange, but we'll get onto Kane later in the episodes. But he's gone a long time without scoring, and then bang, he's got 3 in his last 2. With Lukaku, he scored early in the game. You think he's going to have confidence up, but it just might be the pressure. It might be the pressure looking at it, thinking I'm going to get my team back level, and then it's game on. And it just seems like the whole of Belgium, not just Lukaku, they see a big fixture ahead of them. I know they did beat Portugal, but I think that's for me, that's a game that I expected them to win. This one different. I did say, and I think either Sam or Devon also said that Italy would win 2-1 because they just, when they're on the cusp of something great, and this tournament could have been that if they got to the semi-final and then possibly to the final, they seem to falter. Maybe that's the team's not right tactically. Maybe it's Roberto Martinez. Maybe it's that history's just against them in the fact that they haven't seemed to succeed. The sort of thing that England had for such a long time where they hadn't been good in those knockout stages, and it's sort of just mentally it doesn't work. And I think that just all of that accumulates to that exact moment. So yeah, I was surprised to see Lukaku miss those chances, but it's not the first time that we've seen Belgium as a whole, not just Lukaku, not take the chance when it's right there in front of them.
Yeah, Belgium were at it defensively in the first half, and those 2 goals that Italy scored were probably the fault of the defence in both occasions. Obviously, I think it was Vertonghen who lost the ball to Verratti for the first goal, and then although it was a great goal by Insigne for the second, they should have stepped up and pressurised him more, I think. So I think that let them down a little bit. And on Lukaku, I think I love the way the Italy team defends, like that one moment where Spinazzola blocked it off the line and Chiellini reacted like he'd scored a goal. It was just brilliant. And I think the way this Italian side combine defensive solidity with attacking fluency going forward, I think they're brilliant to watch, and that's why they're now 32 games unbeaten under Mancini.
Well, absolutely right. It speaks for itself, doesn't it? Do you think, though, Sam, that fairly big questions, will now be asked of Roberto Martinez after what will be looked back on as a pretty underwhelming tournament for Belgium?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, everyone's calling this the golden generation, and Belgium being the size of the country, it's unlikely that they'll have all this talent coming through at the same time, maybe ever, or for a very long time at least. Obviously, Jeremy Doku started in this game, and he was probably their best player in the end. He was very impressive. So that's a sign of the future there. And obviously with this unique situation with the World Cup coming next year, a lot of these players could still play in that tournament, but especially in the defence, a lot of those players are quite old now. So I don't know. It's probably was their last chance in the end, and it always comes back to the manager, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. And you mentioned Spinazzola there, and Devon, I think you've been pretty vocal in your praise for him, as so many people have at this tournament. Very sadly, he picked up an injury at the end of this game, and it turned out that he ruptured his Achilles tendon, which means he's definitely out for the rest of the tournament. And we've seen just how influential he has been for Italy down that left-hand side. How big of a blow could this be to their hopes of winning the whole thing?
I think it is a system player, especially this tournament, just because, as we saw in the first few group games, so not necessarily against Belgium, they have been playing them triangles on the left-hand side, as I've said, and whether it's been Spinazzola, Locatelli and Insigne, or when Verratti came back in to add that bit more aggression, Spinazzola's always been that key player. I mean, he's probably the one that started off, and Mæhle from Denmark, of the right-footed left backs in the tournament. What he does differently to the normal trend is that he goes down the line, gets and stays on his left and pulls the ball back instead of driving in field, which is what Insigne does. I'm not sure of the other lad that's going to come in, but Emerson.
He came on in the game, and he's not played at all really for Chelsea, so it's probably a bit of a
I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot Emerson were a footballer, just being that effective. But yeah, just because of his impact, and now it's going to be a big ask for Emerson to step up when he hasn't really played any regular football for the last 18 months. and it's disappointing because arguably he's probably been one of the standout performers this tournament. I'm not sure who would be in the running. It'd be interesting to see who we think in a couple of weeks will be the star of the tournament or who actually gets it. But it's just really disappointing for the lad as well, because obviously it has started on the back of a Mourinho Roma side, and it'd be interesting to see how he'd deploy him, or if he got a move elsewhere. But it's very disappointing to see it, and it's quite sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think I'm not sure anyone would argue against the fact that he's been one of the best players in the tournament. I think he will most definitely be in the team of the tournament at the end of it, because it doesn't matter how Italy do in these final two games now. A lot
Plus,
has been made.
We'll be getting that as well. So,
well, yeah, but I suppose there's a case for Mr. Shaw as well. Before we go on, Sam.
Yeah, I was just going to say that obviously the attacking side of Spinazzola's game has been highlighted a lot, but if you compare it to the other side where Di Lorenzo was having an absolute torrid time against Doku, and you didn't really hear much about Spinazzola on the defensive end, it shows how good he was on that end as well. And the incident I mentioned when he blocked it on the line, so he offers great ability on both sides. So, like Devin says, a huge loss.
Certainly is. Before we move on to the other two games, a lot has been made, Harry, of Italy's time-wasting tactics. I think it's something which we've maybe become accustomed to a little bit in the game nowadays. But what's your take on them? Were you disappointed to see it happen, or is it just to be expected?
It's part of the game. A Euros and a World Cup normally only come around every 4 years for each one. And if it's, you just got to do it. If that's the best way you're going to win, if that maximizes your chance of a winning result, then I'd happily see my team do it. And also it massively infuriates the opposition, which is almost even more brilliant. So I don't mind it. I know it's very frustrating as a neutral to watch, but if England do it, if they get to the final when they're 1-0 up against the Italians, then it's gonna put the cherry on the top if we do it. So yeah, it's completely fine with me.
Yeah, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there.
I think Immobile's antics during the game infuriate people more than pretending he'd broken his leg and then miraculously getting to his feet when the goal was scored.
But that's another thing, isn't it? I don't think that's the first time we've seen a player do that. So
yeah, no,
maybe it's part of the game. Moving on then to the second day of quarter-final action that we saw at the weekend. The first game on that Saturday was between Czech Republic and Denmark. It was held in Baku. I'm still questioning why they ever went to Baku for this tournament, because it's so far away and the stadium is just not built for football, but that's not worth touching on today. Let's focus on the game. It was Denmark who came out on top. They keep marching on, don't they, into the semi-finals. It was Thomas Delaney who got the first goal, and then Kasper Dolberg who got the second. That gave him a 2-0 lead at half-time. But Patrick Schick pulled one back after the break. But it was Denmark who held on and booked their place in those semi-finals. And I think when it comes to Denmark, a lot has obviously been said about the incident involving Christian Eriksen at the start of the tournament and how that spurred them on. And I don't think there's anyone denying that it has had an effect. But I think, should we also now be acknowledging the fact, Sam, that they're simply just a very good team? And I think you were one of the people before the tournament who fancied their chances, but they're a good team even without Christian Eriksen.
Absolutely, they have true quality, and a name that I've mentioned a couple of times, Dan Scardy's come in for Eriksen. In the end, he's been one of the young players of the tournament, I think. And like you say, they've literally gone from strength to strength each game. And in this one, they were compact, composed, ruthless, and rapid on the counter attack as well. They defended excellently in the second half as well. When the Czechs got back into the game, Christensen, Kiev, Vestergaard, that back three were absolutely solid and have been throughout the tournament, and they've just been ruthless going forward. Like I say, Melu, who Devin mentioned a bit earlier, he's been another one of those wing backs. We've seen that, obviously, that wing back formation a lot in this tournament. He's been one of those that's really thrived in that system and got forward a lot and contributed to the attack. Dolberg, who's come in, didn't start originally, but he's come in and shone as well. And yeah, they deserve true credit. Like you say, that incident would bring any team closer together, and they're showing great team spirit, but they have true quality as well. They have a great spine, and yeah, true quality, a great team.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. And I mentioned there, Harry, about how the Czech Republic's first goal or only goal came soon after half time. And a lot has been said about their physicality and the way that they go about things. So how impressed should we be with Denmark, with how they saw that game out? Because they did it pretty seamlessly, I thought.
Well, it's similar to the Wales game. I know Wales aren't as physical, but you look how they dealt with his name escapes me now. Kiefer Moore.
Kiefer Moore.
That's how they dealt with him. And you just look at their back three and think, it's just so solid. And they have three physical centre backs in there with a strong. Well, it's a back three, but also a back five with the wing backs, and they just seem very, very comfortable. I know Patrick Schick did score. Who's been, let's be honest, he's been one of the stars of the tournament. If there's going to be someone that has that big move, like we always see with every tournament, it's going to be him, despite their exit. They seemed very, very comfortable during the game. I know they did concede, but after that, I really, really wasn't too worried for them. And now, coming into the England game, I am very worried about them.
Yeah, different players have stepped up at different times for them. Like I say, Dolberg, but Delaney in this game scoring those goals, and he was brilliant with his darting runs into the box. So the whole team's contributed to this success for them. That it's truly been a team effort, like similar to the Italian side.
I think it's just a team of underappreciated players. When you go through it, Schmeichel, I don't think he's vastly underrated, but he's just been very solid for a lot of years. Christensen, when Thiago Silva came in, especially for the final as well, it just came in like nothing happened when Thiago Silva went off. Kajir Vestergaard, they don't get talked about. Højbjerg, not a lot of people talked about his season at Tottenham. Dolberg's gone off the radar, or isn't known by anyone that doesn't play Football Manager, and he's just been slowly tapping in the goals for them. They're just a team of under the radar players that together with a system that works, it's just been very, very effective. And look at Mahaley. I know he's at Atlanta, I believe, at the moment. I remember when he was linked to Saints, and I wish we got him now. Look how well he's done. So I think there's a lot of players that may be vying for moves in the upcoming transfer window.
You just said Vestergaard doesn't get talked about. Well, he certainly has been in a certain Derbyshire house.
Not always for positive reasons.
No, he's not been too bad this season, but he's probably going to leave. So
yeah, Harry's grown to love him over the last year. But
yeah.
Even after 18 goals.
Just before we move on then, Devon, the Czech Republic heading out, but do you think, like Switzerland, they'll look back on the tournament with a bit of pride?
Well, I mean, they're end of the let's rewind that. End of the day, they finish, even though they look good in the group stages, they finished third, and they've still got to a semi-final. It's some achievement. I think they have played really well in this knockout rounds. They've just maintained their rigidity, their physicality, as George said, and they have been quite good to watch. They managed games well as well. They've not just like the Netherlands game. They sort of weathered the storm before pouncing on that delayed red card, and it wasn't like sometimes with good teams when they get red cards, they will sort of sit back and they'll defend well, whereas Czech Republic didn't give Netherlands that chance to make that sort of call. And overall, you're bound to be happy, aren't you, if you got to a quarter final like the Czech Republic have, and now Brad Cox will be proud of his prediction on this podcast. Now it's in recording terms as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, it'll be pleased that you've brought that up again, I'm sure. Moving on then to speak about who Denmark will be facing in the semi-final at Wembley, and that will, of course, be England, who we've already mentioned at the start. They took Ukraine apart with ease in Rome. I think it's fair to say England were favourites for the game, Sam, and I think they were widely expected to win by their fans. But did you expect it to be as comfortable as it was?
Usually that doesn't mean anything with England going into knockout games in the tournament, George. So I was still very nervous in the preparation for this game. But as we saw with them getting off the mark so early, Harry Kane once again back to his best. It just set everything at ease for me, and it just continued that way throughout the game. I think there was a period just before half time where Ukraine looked like they were getting forward before, but as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, they just seemed out of it really, and they gave up. It almost felt like they gave up towards the end because they were just completely without energy, battered, bruised from that Sweden game. And yeah, we were just a truly professional job from Gareth Southgate's men. Great to see the likes of Sancho come in and play really well as well. Luke Shaw, excellent with those 2 assists. Harry Kane, like I mentioned, and Rice and Phillips once again so solid in midfield. Really positive signs.
Absolutely, several positive signs. And I think a lot was made, Devon, before the game about how it was England's only game away from Wembley. And Southgate, I think, was talking fairly positively about that and said it would be good to have a change of scenery. And he turned out to be absolutely right. Why do you think that was, that it went so well? Do you think it was because the pressure was taken off a little bit?
Yeah, I think it helped to not believe the hype. You know, as soon as we've talked about last week as well, mentality is a big thing in football, and as soon as you start, so it's good to believe in your own ability, but once you already think, oh, like we've talked about anyway, we've been mentioning how we're in, probably going to be a good match against Italy. We've got a semi-final there against a very good side first, but overall, I mean, it's just taking them out there, sort of. And you got to remember, we've been playing the last 18 months behind closed doors and stuff like that. It's not like these players are not used to being away from supporters. And even though there was a couple of supporters there, it's just, they're kind of just already accustomed to it. But overall, I think it was probably good. It was more like a training friendly match, so to speak, not to take anything away from Ukraine, because I think they got the decision wrong on the day. They just didn't seem to have that. Obviously Malinowski wasn't there, and I thought he'd be probably one of our biggest threats, especially against Kyle Walker on the right. But because without his sort of impetus there, the Ukraine looked nothing. Konopalenko was well marked. Yarenchuk got on the right side of Stones once. And overall, it was just a nice performance for England to sort of, instead of letting the Germany game get too overpowered in the minds, it was a good game to keep that momentum there, but also take it out on Ukraine and say, look, we're gonna leave it in our minds, this win, but we're not gonna let us get carried away with it. We're gonna stick to a professional job.
Of course, we have to mention England's defensive solidity as well, because Jordan Pickford is well on his way to taking that golden glove home with him. I'm sure he'd rather have the main prize, but I'm sure he'll be thinking about that as well, because it's 7 clean sheets in a row for England for the first time in their history. Obviously 5 in the tournament because we've only played 5 games, but then including the 2 friendlies before it as well. So it's 662 minutes since we conceded a goal. And Harry, many supporters were doubting the capabilities of the defence more than they were the attack, but they've answered every question brilliantly so far, haven't they?
I mean, apart from Kyle Walker, who maybe the game was a bit dodgy, and then the Ukraine game, he did fall asleep a couple of times, or maybe lack concentration rather than completely fall asleep. They've been just unbreakable. The defence has seemingly been unbreakable. I think they've had an XG against them about 3.37. I think I read somewhere. So Pickford's done a really good job in keeping teams out. And we've come up against all different sorts of attacks. We've come up against pace. We've come up against height. Come up against physicality. And every single time we've been able to answer their questions. We've got flexibility. We can play as a back four. We play as a back five very effectively against Germany. And I think we're going to be a danger to whoever we come up against, because they're not going to know who's going to be in that back five, as in the system, rather than the back four. Because we know it's going to be Shaw, Walker, and then Stones and Maguire, or probably, because we never know with Gareth Southgate, which is a good thing and a bad thing. You can see it either way. But yeah, there's just that sense of solidity, which we hadn't had for years and years. I think there was that 10-year period where we just didn't have any really, really high level centre backs, or at least in their prime, that they might have been 32, 33. Whereas now we've got loads of defensive options, and it's brilliant to see, because it doesn't look like we're going to concede a goal.
I think I'd argue the point against that. I think England did struggle at times against Germany when we've got players running at us. When we're not able to control the play, that's where we are weak. I don't want to say luckily, because Pickford made 2 fantastic saves on one-on-one situations, and Declan Rice sort of sacrificed himself, whether he was going to get a red or a yellow, to stop Werner in the first couple of minutes, or Havertz. And that's going to be an interesting battle to see how we approach and deal with Denmark's threat of running at us as well.
Yeah, I think, as you say there, I think personally the Germany game, the Muller moment obviously stands out, but as you say about Werner breaking through as well. But I think also Pickford just seems so fearless in every situation. He doesn't seem to look nervous at all, and I think that gives the defence real confidence in him, knowing that he's there behind them. We've got to mention Harry Kane as well, who got 2 of England's goals on the night in Rome. Why did anyone ever doubt him, Sam? Do you think now that he goes on to break Lineker's tournament record in this tournament?
Surely, right? It's got to happen. We have to. It's sort of been a tournament of unexpected heroes for England as well. Obviously, Harry Kane, we expected him to perform in this tournament, and he has got there eventually. But we have to give credit to the likes of Raheem Sterling as well, involved in 22 goals in his last 21 England games. I think he's been brilliant in this tournament. We wouldn't be here without his contribution in this tournament. But like you say, it's so important that we've got Harry Kane firing now, because I think he's the key to it all. And he's our main weapon, really, where we face up against other sides that are still in this tournament. Spain don't have that striker. I'd argue Italy don't even have that, really. I guess they have Immobile, but his record for Italy isn't as good as his club record. And he struggled a little bit in the recent games. So that's where we match up better against the sides that are still in the tournament. And having scoring goals again, you got to give credit to the players around him for setting up. Like I say, Sterling, Luke Shaw, his delivery from set pieces in that game was brilliant. And the Mason Mounts and the other players, Jack Grealish as well, who didn't even need to come on the pitch in this game. You got to give credit to them as well.
Yeah, and Harry Maguire, of course, got his customary quarter-final goal. What a header that was. And then the fourth, another header from Jordan Henderson. And I think the bench's reaction to that goal, that video has been shared a fair amount on social media. How pleasing was that for you, Harry, to see, everyone coming together for a player who's clearly been desperate for that first England goal?
I just think it's really, really good to see. We thought he was going to get it for the penalty in the pre-tournament part. I just think it shows how together the team is. I think only 5 players haven't played a single minute. I think Ramsdale, Johnson, Cody, Ben White, and Ben Chilwell haven't played, unless one of them got subbed on in the Czech Republic game that I didn't see. And Gareth Southgate's given them all minutes, which just keeps the whole team together happy, because they all feel like they've played a part. And I think the way that he's handled this tournament has been absolutely fantastic. I think now I was a bit, dubious at the Germany selection, but we wiped, I wouldn't say wipe the floor. Solid 2-0 win. This game was a solid 4-0 win.
We wiped the floor with them.
And now at the moment, I'm not going to be questioning Gareth Southgate anymore. I'm going to go whatever you think's best, because I don't know which pundit brought it up during the coverage of the BBC, but I think he's been in charge of 7 international tournaments, including the England under-21s and now the England senior team. But he knows exactly what his squad is capable of. He knows the players much more than us people that are however many miles away. And he knows how to handle tournaments throughout the whole years of youth and now being the manager of the senior team. So, yeah, my qualms about his selection will be very quiet, from now on.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, Harry. I think he has now got the trust of pretty much the entire nation, whereas back in the group stages, it didn't seem to be that way. But I think what this kind of does show you, what the two knockout games that we've played does show you, is that the group stages of a tournament like this are pretty meaningless in a way. I mean, I know that you can build up momentum through the groups, but ultimately there's really no room to complain unless you go out of the tournament from them. And
it was just getting the job done, really. That was the main thing. Exactly, just getting the job done.
I think I still stand by my point that Southgate kind of used them 3 games as the warm-up games rather than the 2 pre-tournament ones. It's just, but it's worked, and they sort of being able to like allow Sterling to come into his own, and as Kane's been the main instigator of that, because as we've said, Kane likes to drop. Kane likes to come and collect the ball when he's not receiving it anyway. He's not one that's going to stand with his hands on his hips. And that's allowed Sterling to get used to making those runs in behind that. He's had I think he's had about 6 shots, hasn't he? And 2 of them were getting in behind. 1 were a chip, 1 were a save. And his goals have been, especially just peeling off and getting in them positions as well. So it's good that Kane has come into it. But it's more about the whole team as well, because you've got goals coming from everywhere now. It's not just coming from one. We've seemingly found our positions in a set piece, whether that's especially that Maguire header, because we hadn't really seen that all tournament yet, and now it's starting to all fall into place a lot quicker. And maybe Gareth did see the 2018 World Cup as, by the time we got to that Croatia match, we were confident with Sky High and we got overconfident. Maybe now, by using them first 3 group games, it's kind of put a bit of water on them to cool them down and be like, right, okay, now we build that momentum so that if we do beat Denmark and go through to the final, is that we'll be a lot more composed and we'll be able to finish the job off knowing how we play, what to do, and execute a game plan.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a famous night for England. Let's hope there are a couple more still to come over the next week. We will now touch on the 2 semi-finals that we've got to come over the next couple of days, starting with Spain against Italy, which is, of course, at Wembley, because all the remaining games are at Wembley. It's a repeat of the Euro 2012 final. Spain won that one 4-0, but I think it's fair to say, Sam, we've already touched on both of these teams, but Spain go into this as underdogs, right?
Yes, and with Sarabia doubtful, being one of their main creators in midfield, that would be a big loss if he's not able to make the game. Dani Olmo came on against Switzerland, did all right, but I think it'll be a big miss. And I've always got to back Italy, having seen what they've been able to do in this tournament. They're just strong all over. Having Marco Verratti coming into fitness during this tournament, an experienced campaigner, and he's really slotted in well. Barrea was brilliant against Belgium with that goal he scored, absolutely fantastic. And they've got Pessina, who wasn't even in the squad originally, was an emergency replacement, but he scored 2. And Locatelli, these are brilliant midfield players, and they've got strength and depth all over, and I'd have to back them. But we've had quite a few surprises in this tournament already, so you never know.
Very true indeed. And we've mentioned, Harry, how we expect it to be Emerson Palmieri who fills in for Spinazzola. Do you think that's an area that Spain can look to target, an area of vulnerability that Italy have?
Yeah, I think that's Italy's only level of weakness. I think attacking-wise, they've been very strong compared to Spain, who, Devon touched too early. I don't think they've been very good at all. And attacking-wise, I don't think Spain have been brilliant either. I think they're the only team that have scored 5 goals in 2 games. And I've thought, well, I'm not that impressed. You look at Morata, and I think Chiellini's going to have an absolute field day with him. I don't think Spain are going to be great at all. And I think Italy are going to be very, very comfortable in the match, to be honest. I think they're going to get to the final pretty easily.
Well, there we have it. He's laying his cards on the table. Evan, do you think the fact that Italy have already come through a pretty tightly contested match at Wembley could give them a bit of an advantage for this? Because we know that for this semi-final that there's not going to be a great deal of fans from either side in there because of quarantine rules. So do you think that could help them?
I just think it'll come down tactically. I think Spain will just. I don't know. I don't know the split between how many Italians are allowed and how many Spaniards will be in there. But either way, it's just going to be an exciting match to watch overall. Spain will try to pass the ball quickly in them areas, like I've said. It could go two ways. They normally pass the ball like they did against Sweden in the wrong areas, as they've done for much of this tournament. Which is what allowed Croatia to come back into it. But the best when they're aggressive and getting on the ball and in the right areas like they did against Slovakia and really put them under pressure. My problem is by doing that and with how they play defensively, is that Italy will just come at them. They press high, don't they? We've already seen that the defenders panic under pressure, like the equaliser against Switzerland, and I think Italy will just be that relentless going forward. And even defensively, the stalwarts at the back, Bonucci and Chiellini, then you've got Jorginho, who I think will be that player who will. I'm predicting him to be star of the match already, because I think he'll just break everything down that Spain tried to do, especially in them central areas. Positive would be that if Ferran Torres can get the freedom of the left with Emerson out of position, then they could penetrate that area, and hopefully Morata will get on the end of things after his 28 chances before he has a shot on target. But there's nothing. I don't want to feel too confident about it, but I can't see anything other than an Italy win.
It'll be interesting to see how Spain adopts their game plan, because they're used to controlling the ball. But I think to have success in this game, they'll have to look at how Austria performed against Italy. I think that's the game where Italy most struggled, and they have to match them for their defensive intensity and the pressing up top, which Italy do so well, and they did so effectively against Belgium, especially for that first goal. So I think it'll be tough, but they'll have to match them for that side of the game, and that's where they'll have success.
Do you think they will, though, just because Spain, for their philosophy, just like to keep the ball? Do you think they'll be sort of ignorant to that fact, or too stubborn to change their way? Or do you think they'll go, no, we have to do this?
You'll be playing a big risk, though, when you try and keep the ball, especially in defensive areas against the Italian side. We saw in the first game, especially Turkey, they got caught out so many times and were punished. And as I mentioned, that first goal in the Belgian game with Vertonghen being lazy on the ball and trying to bring it out and losing it. So if they could easily try to keep the ball and try to nullify what Italy do, but I think they've got to be realistic.
From the side though as well, you mentioned about being like Austria, but that's Austria's forte. They are resolute and they will defend for their lives, and they are strong defensively, whereas Spain aren't. And we saw that even though the red card happened in the 74th minute or something around like that time, Spain for the remaining quarter and for extra time especially did not change. They didn't seem to up the tempo. They just kind of kept it simple, kept it what they know. But Enrique is not as bad tactically, so maybe he will change something just for the start of this game, because if not, they're going to get battered.
I think we all seem to be maybe siding towards Italy in terms of who we think is going to come through this one. But let's get some score predictions anyway out of you guys. Harry, I'll go to you first.
I want to say 3-0, but I'm just going to go 2-0 to the Italians.
Damn it, that was mine.
Sam's got 2-0 as well. Devon?
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go Italy 4, Spain 0. I think sometimes you always get that one exciting semi-final and the other one will be tight.
Monumentally again, isn't it?
Do you think it'll be a complete reverse of that Euro 2012 final? I think Harry hinted at that as well.
I'm not brave enough.
I'm going for it. Sometimes you just got to be a bit unpredictable. Even negative Nancy like me's got to go a bit more expressive. As soon as England went more expressive on Saturday night, Gareth fully embraced himself, and I'm in for it now. Come on.
I'm also gone a little bit boring on this one. I've also got 2-0 to Italy written down, so we're all writing off Spain. So that's all the motivation they need. Now I think a lot of other pundits and fans will be thinking the same, but maybe they could
I
spring
mean,
a surprise.
if Spain do want to go through and we want to go through as well, I'm all for that. Do not get me wrong, because I think tactically we'd be better. I think we're better facing Spain. But you never know. Denmark are a good side, so I'm sure we're going to get onto that now.
Yeah, we're certainly not there yet, but we will get onto that now, certainly. England versus Denmark then will be the second semi-final, and we've teased it throughout this episode, but it's time to get talking about the key battles that we expect to see. In the stands, there's going to be 60,000 in attendance. We don't know whether it will reach that amount for the Spain-Italy game, but I think you can guarantee there will be 60,000 there for the England one. And the crowd seemed to make a pretty big difference against Germany. The celebrations for the 2 goals were interesting for sure. I think social distancing went out the window, but I don't think anyone particularly cares about that, to be honest. I thought it was brilliant to see. Do you see it having a similar sort of impact in this game, though, Harry?
Obviously, it's going to be a lot more difficult than what it was previously. I think Denmark, we've not beaten them in their last 2. We've not even scored. I think it was a 0-0 draw away, and then they beat us 1-0 at Wembley. I think Eriksen's penalty. I think we had 2 red cards as well. I don't know how impactful the second one was. I can't remember when it was, but I think it's going to be I think this is going to be our biggest test. I think it's going to be harder than Germany. I know it's just whoa, big thing to say. I think it's going to be harder than what Germany had on the table. I think their 3-back formation. I know Germany play a sort of similar way, but I just think that the whole Denmark vibe, I think everyone was against us after a lot of people laughed at the young German girl crying. I think even more people are going to be against us now because Denmark are everyone's second team, especially if you're not English coming into this game. So it's going to be that situation where the world's against us again. So hopefully in the stadium, well, obviously in the stadium, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be 90% English, or probably about at least 80%. And I think that's going to be huge, because I think all 4 teams that got to the semi-final had all 3 of their all 3 of their group games at home. So the fact that we've got that extra advantage in the semi-final and then hopefully the final, it's going to be absolutely massive. A lot of people call it unfair, and partly, I see that as well, but I don't care if we win the tournament. So fingers crossed it happens.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned specifically, Harry, when we spoke about Ukraine and also about the whole tournament, of how Southgate has tended to tinker between each game, making little changes here and there. And we saw against Germany, he used a back 3, then Ukraine, he reverted back to a back 4. Sam, how do you see him going about it for this Denmark game? Do you think Ukraine went so well that he should stick with that system, or do you see him reverting back again?
Yeah, that's not his style, though, is it? He said that he always prepares for the team ahead. He doesn't tend to use those previous games too much in his thoughts of preparation. So I do see him going back to the back 3, which nullified Germany pretty well. And I do actually agree with Harry in the sense that I think this will be a tougher game, because, like I said before, Denmark have gone from strength to strength, and they know the system really well that they've been playing, and they're really comfortable with it now. And they've got a lot of threats, a lot of players that have stood up, and there's still some players in that team that can stand up and make an impact for them. But he's obviously got that conundrum that he's had the whole tournament, Southgate, with deciding which players he goes with in attack. Obviously, Sancho came in for a first start of the tournament and did pretty well. It'll be interesting to see if Saka is fit enough for this game, whether he brings him back in. Grealish, Foden didn't even touch the pitch against Ukraine, so they'll be fresh. So I probably expect those 2 to come in from the start against Denmark.
Yeah, and I think there's been maybe a few suggestions as well that Jordan Henderson could maybe get the nod. But Devon, that Rice and Phillips partnership has been so strong. Can you really see that being broken up to bring Henderson in?
I wouldn't. I think you need to keep that consistent. I think it's worked, and like the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think it'd just be key to see whether he decides to bring Mount into that midfield two instead. Obviously, he didn't get the chance against Germany to do that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? That was the game that they came back for. Yep.
Yeah. That it came out.
I waited for some confirmation there, just the silence. So obviously in that midfield too, when they're coming back, is that does he want to bring someone in that's going to be like an advanced 8, or are we going to keep Phillips there to break down play? And I think with where their strength is, it'd be nice to see a match on match between Højbjerg and Phillips. But I don't think, as much as Henderson, obviously, how good he is and how much of a leader he is, and the fact that he scored doesn't help with this pick, because people get a bit too excited when people score. And I wouldn't start him, personally. I think even though people were going on saying, people said he won't be fit, but he's still not started a game, has he? He's only come in second half appearances, and you wouldn't change too much.
No, I'd agree with you, and I quite like him as the option should we get the lead. I think he's a good player to come on. He's a really good leader. It's clear to see within kind of that group on the bench, and I think a lot's been said about the players who haven't been able to feature, and I think while Henderson hasn't started a game, he's clearly been key in that department as well. In terms of Denmark then, Sam, you touched on Damsgaard earlier on, as well as Dolberg as well. Are there any other players who worry you particularly going into this one, or do you think Damsgaard and Dolberg are two that we should really look out for?
Yeah, Yusuf Poulsen as well. I'm not sure whether he's fit for this game or not. He's been decent, and Braithwaite's been a great leader for the team as well. But I think it's just mainly the system and how comfortable with it that's causes a lot of problems. They create overloads on the wings with the attacking left back, with the attacking wing backs. Made in particular, who's been the star of those two. So that's where potentially Southgate would switch back to the back five to prevent the back line being stretched too much, having to deal with those excess of players on the wing in defensive situations. So that's where they cause the most problems, and that's where we've got to look out for. But we've been so solid defensively, I'm not really worried about that side of the game too much. It's how he lines up again going forward, which is always the most heated debate we have as England fans at the start of the game when the team lineup comes out.
I suppose two of them positions are already cemented in, aren't they?
Yeah, you probably see Kane and Sterling again, but it's with Grealish not playing at all against Ukraine and Foden as well. It'll be interesting to see what he goes with.
The thing is with Foden is that because he's coming up against Joachim Mæhle, is that with him being a right-footed left back, I'd like to see Sancho still in there, getting on the outside of him and drilling it in for Kane, rather than someone like Foden who's going to look to cut inside. And I'm not saying that Phil Foden can't do it on the wing, because he's very direct sometimes, but I still think Sancho would be the better option of him, Saka and Foden.
Surely as well, he'll be thinking with Mæhle, he'll want someone there who's going to do the tracking back as well. And I suppose there'll be players more suitable to that job. So
that's why you set up for the back five. So then you've got the wing backs going up against each other in that sense.
Yeah. I think someone like Reece James in this game could be really good in terms of pressing Mæhle and stopping him, getting him behind before putting early crosses into Kane and Sterling.
Yeah, I think James would certainly be an option if it went to a back three.
Not seen a lot of him either, so he'll be fresh as well.
Absolutely right. I think we should probably get some predictions then, if we're brave enough to make them going into this one. But I think we are, because we're recording this more than 48 hours before it kicks off. So let's do it. We're
only going to go one way with our predictions, let's be honest.
Whoa, Sam.
Yeah, I think you're probably right,
What do you mean,
Sam.
whoa? What? So
go on, Harry. You start us off then,
Harry. What you're forgetting is that there's more Saints players in Denmark than there is in the English side.
Go on then, Harry. Predict Denmark to win.
I'm actually quite worried about that happening, but I'm not going to predict that to happen. I'm going to predict a very narrow 1-0 England win. I just think it will be one moment of magic in what I believe will be a stale game. But I'm more than happy for it to be stale if it means that we get to the final. So, yeah.
There we have it. Devon?
I'm also going to go for a 1-0 victory. I think it'll be like a game of chess, this. I think it for the first 30 minutes, I think we'll get a burst in the opening 5, but then for the first 35 minutes, it's going to be kind of both sides going, then go on then, make a move, and then eventually I think it'll open up. But so I say open up, I've still got 1-0 prediction, so that's very hypocritical. But yeah, 1-0 England.
Very true. Sam?
We've got to concede eventually, don't we? I think. I'm going to go 2-1. I think we'll score 2 in the first half, and then they'll put 1 back, and then it'll be a nervy sort of end to the game. And we'll have to defend and see it out as we've done very well in this tournament so far.
I think you're right, Sam. I think this will be the game that someone breaks through, but I've also got 2-1 to England. I don't. There's no shaming conceding to this Denmark team either. They've shown the firepower that they've got is going to give us a test, but I do think we'll come through it. And
if we face an Italian side that probably will score against us because they just at the minute they seem to force it in, we've got to know how to deal with that. And I don't want Pickford just to stand there going, go on, let's see how we react. But if we do, you know what it is. Sometimes, when a team's high on confidence and then you knock them, it can fully disable the card tower. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've got no concerns about Pickford at all. He's a different keeper when he wears those 3 lions, so I'm sure he'll be okay. That wraps it up then. We've given our predictions. Fingers crossed we've all got the outcome right for the England game. I don't know how we're going to feel if it goes the other way, because that would just be pretty gut-wrenching given the talk around this being our best chance in a generation or whatever it is. But as we've said, this Denmark game is going to be a test, and fingers crossed we come through it. Devon, have you got something else to add there?
I was just going to say I was really emotional after Ukraine game, so never mind whether we're going to actually what's going to happen in this one. I'm going to be in tears again, I think.
2 more to go, hopefully. But yeah, that's all we've got time for this one. Maybe, hopefully, we'll see how our scheduling works, but we will try and squeeze another in before the final, previewing that. If you want more of us, if you want 2 of us in a week, which you might not want, admittedly, but we'll be doing it anyway. But thank you very much, and hopefully England will be in that final when we preview it, but we will see you in the next one.
See ya.